So, you want to sit the GAMSAT, but you're not really sure on how to do well in it? Well, make sure you stick around because I'm going to give you my tips and tricks on how to do well in GAMSAT. What is up guys, Vic here and welcome back to another video. In the last video, I talked about the first requirement you need to do to get into medicine, and that's to do well at university. If you haven't watched that video, I'm going to leave a link below because I think it's very useful for you to watch it because it will help you in this video as well. Honestly, it's still helping me now, and it's been years after I started my bachelor's degree now in medicine. This video, I'm going to be talking about the second requirement that you need to do well in to get into medicine, and that's the GAMSAT. So this video is going to be very helpful for you to watch if you're thinking about sitting the test. And I'm going to be first of all talking about what the GAMSAT is and what to expect from it, but later on, more importantly, the interesting part, I'm going to give you my tips and tricks as well as those my friends used to get really good marks in GAMSAT and then finally study medicine. So if you want to find out, make sure to stick around to the end of the video because the last tip is going to surprise you. Now, if you ask every single medical student in Australia, at least ones who are into postgraduate pathway, there's one thing that absolutely all of us are going to agree on. And that's that we're so damn happy we never have to sit the GAMSAT again, and that we get to save the $500 that everyone has to spend on the exam. It's absolutely expensive, and once you're done with it, it's just such a big relief. So hopefully the tips and tricks I share with you towards the end of the video help make sure that the next GAMSAT you sit is the very last one you have to worry about. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what the GAMSAT is and what to expect from it. Because honestly, if you don't know what it is, you're not going to do well in it at all. But if you've already done it, or you know what it is and what to expect from it, I'm going to leave timestamps below so you can go ahead and skip to the interesting parts, which are going to be my tips and tricks. So I'll be honest, the best way for you to actually wrap your head around what the GAMSAT is to actually read the booklet that ASAR, the body that organizes the exam, releases every year. But it's a very long booklet with a lot of information, so I read it so you don't have to. So essentially the GAMSAT is just an admissions test that universities use to help select students that they want to teach in their postgraduate medical programs. So the key word here is graduate. Postgraduate medical program. So that means that if you don't already have a bachelor's degree or you aren't about to finish one, then this exam is not relevant to you at all. You need to get one if you want to be eligible to sit this exam. Otherwise, you want to go check out something called the UCAT, which is the undergraduate form of the test. I'm going to leave a link for that below, but if you want to hang around and find out more about the GAMSAT, this is the video for you. So the GAMSAT is going to be looking at a bunch of skills that medical universities are interested in, but overall they're going to be looking at your problem-solving skills, your critical thinking skills, and your written communication. Now the actual exam is divided into 3 sections, with the first one called Reasoning in Humanities and Social Sciences. And luckily for us, that one is all multiple choice questions, or MSQs for short. And in this section they're going to be testing you on a few things, but overall they're going to be looking at your understanding and your interpretation of ideas and concepts in topics that come from social and cultural themes. And they're going to be doing that by presenting you with a whole bunch of different media types, like passages from novels, from articles, from poems, and any other media type that you can think of. Now the second section is written communication, and in this one they're going to be looking at your ability to pretty much just write stuff and the ideas you're going to be writing about. So anyone who's into creative writing and just loves writing and is good at it, this is your time to shine. And this is actually my favorite section despite me not having those skills, but I still did well in it, and stick around to the tips and tricks part to find out how. So in this section they're going to give you 2 tasks to write about. The first one is going to be some topic out of social cultural themes, and the second one is going to be more personal and social, and pretty much they're going to be testing your ability to write and develop original ideas and just put them all together in a way that flows nicely and just makes sense. And that's where the bulk of the mark comes from. But I'm not gonna lie, they still do look at your English mastery and how well you write. So it does still play a role in the mark you get. But don't worry if English isn't your strong suit. It's not my first language. I definitely do still struggle every now and then with writing stuff in English. However, if I did well, I'm sure you'll do well too. Alright, so moving on to the last section, it's called Reasoning in Biological and Physical Sciences. And this is where people who have a scientific background, like I did, will shine. And I'm not even kidding, I did so well in this one, much better than the other two sections, that it actually carried my mark, my whole exam further than I could have expected. Basically, this section, they're going to be testing your ability to use critical thinking and problem solving within scientific themes. So they're going to be looking at biology, chemistry, and physics, all three of them, and they're just going to be using multiple choice questions. Okay, now that we covered what the GAMSAT actually is, we can move on to the part most of you have been waiting for. And that's my tips and tricks on how to do well in GAMSAT, so hopefully you'll never have to sit it again. Now make sure to stick to the end because the last tip will definitely surprise you. It's something you wouldn't expect, especially from a medical student. Okay, so tip number 1, and that's to actually plan your study. Now if you haven't watched the last video I made in my How to Med series, I highly recommend you do because I talk about how to actually organize your study in that one, and it will definitely be helpful for the GAMSAT as well. So here I really want you guys to figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and then take all the time and effort you want to put in the fun stuff, the stuff you know well, put them in the stuff you know nothing about, because that's the only way you're going to improve. So if you have a science background, forget the science for the most part of studying and put that all towards the first two sections instead. And I promise you, you will not regret doing that. Number 2, and that's to read, and yeah, you guessed it, read some more. And here I just really want you guys to just read anything and everything you can put your hands on, especially if they're non-fictional novels, online news articles, poems, anything to expose yourself to as many media types as you can, because like I said, section number 1 is going to expose you to a whole bunch of them whether you like it or not. So you might as well get comfortable reading them and understanding them all. And one thing I did as well was just test myself using reading comprehensions online, and I'm going to leave a link for that below so you can check them out too. And by reading a lot, you'll also expose yourself to more ideas, more concepts, and you'll be more in tune with what's going on in the outside world, especially in terms of politics, international affairs, and a lot of stuff that they actually ask about, at least in the first written task in the second section. So all these things you write about, it's going to help you write something more interesting, more creative, and definitely more contemporary, and hopefully get you a higher mark in section 2 as well. Alright, moving on to tip number 3. Now make sure to stick around because we're getting closer to tip number 6, which is a surprising one. But anyway, for tip number 3, that's to take note of anything interesting that you come across in your reading. Honestly, if you come across anything interesting in a book or a novel, say it's a quote from some political figure in an online article you were reading about, take note of it, try and remember it, and I promise you, if you can fit it in your essay, it's going to give you bonus points for at least tying it in with something relevant and from the outside. But the last time I sat the GAMSAT, I remember that one of the essay tasks was to write about the meaning of happiness for me and for others. And I started it off with a quote I really liked from Aristotle. It's not something I read in a book or in an article, it's just something I happened to come across online, and I just happen to be a person that likes to pick up on quotes like that, especially if they're short ones that I can remember, because they just sound nice and they're inspiring as well. And this one says that happiness depends on us. So I used that to start off the essay and really set the tone for the essay because it was just so relevant to the topic at the time. So it really fit in perfectly. I even ended the essay with a funny quote that I liked from Einstein, and it goes something like this: a table, a chair, a bowl of fruit, and a violin. what else does a man need to be happy? And as you see, putting stuff like this in an essay will just make it pop out a little bit more and give you just a little bit more points. But believe me, any small extras and bonuses that you can get is going to make a massive, massive difference in your overall mark. And that's what we want, don't we? Alright, moving on, tip number 4, and that's to expand your vocabulary. And I mean really expand it, because GAMSAT is not going to be pulling any punches when it comes to using words and phrases that you will never hear before, and I doubt you'll ever use again. I'll even make it easier for you. I'm going to put a link below that has a list of some words that the GAMSAT will use. I think there's about 400 of them that I found online. Hopefully that helps you. It definitely might help you in section 1, where they tend to use these words, but it will definitely help you in section 2, because if you're anything like me, you really try and spice it up with some fancy words when you're writing any essay in English. And I don't know if it helps, but I mean, we can at least hope it does help, right? To give us some extra points every now and then, you know, just do whatever we can. Alright, tip number 5. We're getting close to that last one, so make sure to hang around to find out what it is. It will surprise you. But for this one, tip number 5 is to practice. Practice and practice some more. I mean, the quote, "practice makes perfect," isn't popular for no reason, right? It's popular because it's true. And here I mean to use all the resources you have. There's so many online, so many books. Keep using them. Keep solving questions. Keep writing essays. Keep learning new words. Keep reading novels, articles, anything you can. Just keep practicing and you'll get better. And you won't just get better at solving the questions, no. You'll even get better at managing your time. And that's very important in a test like GAMSAT. Because, let's face it, you'll probably get stressed. But if you already know how to manage your time in a test that has a lot of questions in a very short amount of time, it's going to be very helpful, and it's going to at least make you a tiny bit more comfortable going in to sit the test. Right guys, we're finally here, tip number 6. This is a surprising one. Now before I tell you what it is, I know it's going to sound crazy, it's going to sound counterintuitive, it's going to sound dumb. But I just wanted to let you know it's an option. But do keep it as a last resort. Honestly, for most of you, it's probably better off to completely ignore this tip and focus on the other ones. However, it worked for me, it worked for other people, not that many, but it still worked. So just wanted to let you know it's an option out there, but I did warn you. So for this tip, I'm actually gonna advise you to not study too much. Definitely don't go crazy with it. And even maybe not study at all. Now don't get me wrong, the first time I did sit the GAMSAT, I did study. I followed all these tips I mentioned and I did well. I did very well, especially for the first time someone would sit it. But here's where it gets interesting. When I sat the exam for the second time, I got the exact same mark. And guess what? I didn't study for it the second time. Did not study for it a single bit. Nothing at all. First time I did all the practice questions, the reading, the new words, everything. But I got the same mark doing nothing. And then here's where it gets even more interesting. The third time I sat it, the last time as well, I got the highest mark I ever got. And it was a very big gap between the third time and then with the other two. I didn't expect to get that high, and again, I didn't study for the exam. So let me tell you why I, a student who's always put all the time and effort and paid $500 for this exam, ended up not studying for it. And that's because I came to the realization that no matter how much effort and time I put into it, I don't think it helped at the end. Because let's face it, you can learn as many words as you want, pick up as many new concepts and ideas as you want, and they might help you in the exam, especially the first 2 sections. But what happens if all the words you learned aren't included in the exams, and they use a whole different bunch of them that you never learned? Or what if all the quotes and the concepts you learned aren't relevant to any of the topics they ask you to write about? So what happened to all the time and effort you put into the exam if you never ended up using them at all? So I just preferred using my time in a way that would benefit me in a greater way in the long term. So I decided to volunteer instead, for example, instead of sitting at home all the time worrying about an exam that I thought depended entirely on the exam and not about my knowledge and my skills. So if you do decide not to study like I did, at least be smart about it. I didn't study for the third section because I already knew the content. I didn't do the stuff for the second and the first section because I was already doing stuff in my day-to-day life that I felt was more than enough for me to do well in them at the end, even after I studied. So I'd always try and learn new words when I come across them, and then I'd remember them and use them later on. I'd always pick up on quotes that I really like, and I read books. I'm always up to date with what's going on in the world, especially in terms of politics and international affairs. So all these stuff I was already doing. I didn't feel like I needed to go overboard or extreme with them for a few months just because I felt like I needed to for an exam. So that's why I didn't study for it, and if you decide to do the same, be smart about it. Well, there you have it, guys. That's it for this video, and I hope you found it helpful. If you did, press the like button, leave a comment below, press that subscribe button as well to keep up with all the other videos I post, and honestly, it's just gonna push me to make more and more videos and make them better in the future as well. And like always, all the best, and hopefully I see you in the next video.